The Republican Party is the empire. That's not an exaggeration, that's reality. From how they define who belongs, to how they silence truth, to how they consolidate power. The parallels between the Trump-era GOP and the Galactic Empire are no longer science fiction. In this video, I'll show you 7 chilling examples of how the world we live in today looks more and more like the one we know from a galaxy far, far away. You might think we're living in a democracy, but take a closer look and you'll see we're living in the early chapters of an empire. An empire defines who belongs and who doesn't. Every empire needs someone to blame, someone to fear, someone to expel, someone to erase. In Star Wars, the Galactic Empire made its view of the other crystal clear. Non-human species were not part of the system, they were beneath it. Wookiees were enslaved, Twi'leks were made to dance and colonized, droids were silenced and sold. With perhaps the exception of Dedra and Andor, the Empire built its rank on only one type of being: human, male, and loyal. This wasn't just preference, it was a policy, an unspoken but enforced rule. Power belongs to us. Everyone else gets pushed out. In our own galaxy, Donald Trump and the modern GOP have built a strikingly similar doctrine, not in space, but in law. In his first term, Trump introduced one of the most openly xenophobic policies in modern US history, the Muslim ban. Travelers from 7 Muslim-majority nations were barred from entering the US based not on action, but on religion and ethnicity. Courts challenged it, protests filled airports, but the message had already landed: you don't belong. And at the border, families were separated, children were put in cages, entire migrant communities were labeled as criminals, or in Trump words, animals and vermin. Now in 2025, Trump has returned and the empire is no longer a metaphor. His administration is building plans for mass deportation camps. You may have heard of ones like Alligator Alcatraz. There's plans for sweeping raids and the largest domestic relocation effort in modern US history. Millions are at risk, not because of what they've done, but because of who they are. And this purge isn't limited to its borders. In his second term, Trump has declared war on diversity itself. Federal DEI programs were dismantled. University leaders were forced out under political pressure. Accomplishments of African Americans erased from the history books. Any attempt to prioritize racial equality, LGBT rights, or cultural inclusion is now labeled as radical, un-American, or woke. Just like the empire refused to elevate non-human voices, Trump's America is systematically erasing the marginalized from the corridors of power. In both systems, difference is cast as weakness, diversity as danger, belonging as a threat to the throne. But in Star Wars, the rebels weren't the elite. They were the outcasts, alien pilots, smugglers, orphans, former slaves. People the Empire discarded, but who found power together. In America, the same story unfolds. The people pushed out: immigrants, Muslims, Black and brown communities, trans kids, disabled voices. They are not the threat, they are the resistance. The Empire says you don't belong. The Republic answers, you always have. Empires don't conquer republics from the outside, they rot them from within. In Star Wars, the fall of the Republic didn't begin with war. It began with a lie. Palpatine claimed the Jedi were plotting a coup. He called it treason, declared a state of emergency, and used the chaos to seize absolute power, all while claiming to protect democracy. It wasn't real. But it didn't have to be. Fear made it true. In the United States, we witnessed our own version of that lie in 2020. Donald Trump lost a free and fair election, but he refused to concede. He spread false claims of voter fraud, not to challenge the system, but to destroy faith in the system itself. He pressured state officials to find votes. He leaned on the Department of Justice to declare the election corrupt. And on January 6, 2021, he sent his followers to the Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. The goal wasn't to win. It was to break the rules, to claim power not through votes, but through force. Just like Palpatine, Trump cast himself as the victim of a conspiracy. And just like the Jedi Purge, he used the moment to eliminate those who opposed him. Not with lightsabers, but with threats, lies, and violence. The Star Wars Republic collapsed with applause, because people believed they were protecting it, even as they watched it die. In America, we stood at the same precipice. A violent mob breached the seat of government. Officials feared for their lives. The Constitution bent under the weight of a single man's ambition. And today, that man is back in power, still repeating the lie, still casting himself as the only one who can fix the mess he made. But here's what Star Wars has taught us. The destruction of democracy never comes all at once. It comes through erosion, through exceptions, through fear. The Empire didn't begin with a battle, it began with a vote, made in panic, driven by lies. The Republic dies not in flames, but in silence, if no one speaks out. The goal of an empire is never peace, it's control. In Star Wars, the Death Star wasn't built to fight armies. It was built to send a message. We don't need your consent. We have firepower. It was a weapon of fear. Fear of disobedience, fear of rebellion, fear of questioning the throne. And the man who built it, Emperor Palpatine, ruled not by vote, but by strike, not by law, but by force. And in 2025, that playbook is alive and well. President Donald Trump, in his second term, has abandoned any pretense of shared power. This year, he launched a military strike on Iran without congressional approval. No debate, no oversight, just a single man ordering death from the sky. Now, where have we seen that before?
One blast to any part of it will destroy the entire station.
The Constitution says Congress declares power. But like Palpatine, Trump doesn't ask. He just acts. And when protests erupted in California this spring, Trump again bypassed all norms. Without any formal requests from state officials, he deployed the National Guard to the streets of Oakland and Los Angeles. His justification? Law and order. But in truth, it was a flex of federal muscle. A warning. This wasn't protection, it was provocation. Governors and mayors pushed back, but it didn't matter. Because, like the Empire, Trump's America answers to only one voice. And that voice wants more than just boots on the ground. Trump is now pushing for an Iron Dome for America, a massive domestic missile defense system with unclear targets and unlimited scope, framed as protection, but modeled on paranoia. A symbol of power, not peace. In Star Wars, the Death Star was framed the same way. A deterrent, a necessity. But everyone knew the truth. It wasn't built to protect planets. It was built to destroy them. Trump talks of strength, but he acts with fear. Fear of dissent, fear of protest, fear of democracy itself. In 2020, Trump used federal agents to clear peaceful protesters in Washington, D.C. with tear gas and rubber bullets, all for a photo op. And in 2025, he's shown he's willing to do it again. Even asking unwanted questions comes with a risk.
Sir, hands up, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on.
This is the Senate chamber. I have every right to be here. Will no one help me? Gorman is being slaughtered. Remember this day. Remember Gorman.
Palpatine ruled by emergency. Trump governs by exception. Every crisis becomes a stage for control. And just like the Empire, what began as security quickly becomes suppression. The Republic believed in restraint. The Empire believed in domination. America will have to choose. Every empire claims to work for the people, but it only works for the powerful. In Star Wars, the Galactic Empire doesn't govern to uplift, it governs to extract. It funnels resources to local systems, gives contracts to favored corporations, builds war machines in one sector while leaving others in ruin. Entire planets, like Gorman, Lothal, Ferrix, and Jeddah, are stripped bare, their people left to survive under military occupation while profits flow to the top. If you're connected to the Empire, you thrive. If you resist or simply exist in the wrong place, you suffer. In Trump's America, we see the same design. In his first term, Trump passed one of the largest tax cuts in US history, a windfall for corporations and billionaires. The rich got richer, the working class got promises. Those cuts exploded the deficit. And now in 2025, Trump wants to pay for them by cutting Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. The safety net for working Americans is being shredded to preserve tax havens for the ultra-wealthy. And while the climate crisis deepens, Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, gutted the EPA, and weakened FEMA, the very agency meant to protect Americans in disasters. Hurricanes, wildfires, floods, ignored or downplayed. States forced to fend for themselves. Just like the empire, Trump only shows up when there's loyalty, not when there's need. His second term has doubled down on cuts to food assistance, a tax on the healthcare system, eliminations of environmental protections, all while defense spending surges, all while billionaires see record profits. This isn't mismanagement, it's design. The empire's policies aren't broken, they're built to serve the elite. The same is true now. Trump governs for his donors, his allies, his base. Everyone else is left behind. In Star Wars, rebellions don't start because people hate order. They start because the system stopped working for them. Gorman, Ferrix, Lothal, Jeddah, these weren't just planets. They were warnings. The question is, how many Americans have to suffer before we stop mistaking cruelty for strength? Justice is the first promise of a republic and the first casualty of an empire. In Star Wars, the empire doesn't rise overnight. It rises when courts fall silent, when law no longer checks power, it serves it. Palpatine used war to justify emergency powers. He disbanded oversight and dissolved the Senate.
The Imperial Senate will no longer be of any concern to us. I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
Jedi were branded as traitors, all with the approval of a judiciary loyal to him. Trials replaced by executions. Sentences issued in minutes with no defense allowed.
Charges?
Civil disruption, anti-imperial speech, fleeing the scene of anti-imperial activity, attempted damage to imperial property.
I'm sorry, there's something wrong.
I wouldn't. You got enough trouble without a resisting judgment charge.
I'm just a tourist.
Oh, apologies all round then. This used to be a 6-month sentence. 6 years.
6 years? No,
wait!
Change of guidelines.
I didn't do anything.
The courtroom is a formality. The verdict already written. Palpatine didn't just crush the rebellion with the Death Star. He crushed it with robes and gavels. Here in America, Donald Trump has followed a similar path, and now in his second term, we're seeing it play out in real time. He didn't just appoint judges, he installed loyalists. In his first term, Trump reshaped the federal judiciary with over 230 judges, many handpicked by the Federalist Society. And at the top, the Supreme Court. 3 justices, all young, all ideologically aligned, all confirmed by a Senate more loyal to power than to the Constitution. There's Neil Gorsuch, seated after Trump's allies blocked Obama's nominee. Brett Kavanaugh pushed through despite controversy and many ethical red flags. And Amy Coney Barrett rushed in just days before the 2020 election. With this court, Trump didn't just influence law, he altered the future. Roe v. Wade, gone. Affirmative action, gone. Environmental protections, gutted. Executive power, now unchecked. In the empire, justice serves the emperor. In today's America, justice increasingly serves the president. And now, Trump has begun enacting Project 2025, a plan that places the Department of Justice directly under presidential control. Independence is gone. Obedience is expected. Trump has promised to prosecute his political enemies, and we've seen it play out already firsthand with CBS and Rupert Murdoch. Judges who resist are smeared. Prosecutors who disagree are replaced. In the empire, this is called order. And a democracy has another name: tyranny. The courts are meant to defend the republic. When they defend the ruler instead, the republic is already gone. In every empire, the truth depends on who's in charge. In Star Wars, the Galactic Empire doesn't just rule by force, it rules by controlling the story. After the fall of the Republic, Palpatine doesn't just outlaw the Jedi, he rewrites history. The HoloNet, once a free galactic communication system, is transformed into state-run propaganda.
The beliefs of the Jedi Council are irrelevant. We deal strictly in facts and evidence, and the evidence points to Padawan Tano being guilty of the attack on the temple and the murder of the Republic officers. This is sedition.
The Jedi, once protectors of peace, are painted as traitors. The rebellion labeled as terrorist. Even in the Outer Rim, fear and lies flow through Imperial channels. Free speech disappears. The only truth that matters is the one approved by the Emperor. Back on Earth, the pattern feels disturbingly similar. During his presidency, Donald Trump declared the press the enemy of the people. Networks like Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax didn't just report on his administration, they echoed it. Election lies, COVID misinformation, January 6th downplayed as a patriotic protest.
In fact, it was Trump supporters who lost their lives that day, not Trump supporters who were taking the lives of others.
I've repeatedly asked for the Capitol footage from before and during January 6th. Such footage would provide answers, could contain exculpatory evidence regarding the outrageous accusations against members of Congress, and most importantly, exonerate the many Americans who peacefully protested and never set foot in the Capitol.
For many Americans, the line between journalism and propaganda has vanished. And when reality didn't match Trump's narrative, reality was changed. Even the National Weather Service was pressured to support a false forecast.
And you see it was going to hit not only Florida, but Georgia. It could have was going toward the Gulf. That was what was originally projected.
This wasn't just spin, it was imperial thinking. When independent voices get too loud, empires shut them down. CBS claims Colbert's cancellation was purely economic, but the timing, days after his attack on Trump's deal with Paramount and during the Skydance merger, raises some red flags. Critics say this looks less like budget cuts and more like political maneuvering to remain in the emperor's good graces. When NPR reports on stories critical of his administration, he gutted the already approved funding that they depend on, leaving many stations to fend for themselves. In both galaxies, the message is clear. Speak out and you may disappear. And as cracks in the truth widened, Trump launched his own platform, Truth Social, an echo chamber where disagreements are deleted and the emperor's voice never fades. Under Project 2025, Trump allies have even proposed consolidating federal communication powers under the White House. If successful, the line between government messaging and political propaganda would collapse completely. The empire didn't rise because people were silenced. It rose because people believed the silence was truth. Empires don't need consistency. They need control. In Star Wars, the Trade Federation wasn't just a corporation. It was a cartel with its own army. They used blockades, tariffs, and trade wars to pressure weaker systems. Behind the scenes, they were manipulated by a Sith Lord pretending to support commerce, while secretly pushing the galaxy towards chaos. Sound familiar? Under Trump, the US launched a series of tariff wars, especially with China. But these weren't carefully negotiated policies. They were threats on Twitter, executive orders with no warning and no approval, a weaponized economy built on chaos. The result? US farmers devastated, manufacturing costs surging, consumers paying more, all while allies and rivals alike losing trust. Economists call it unpredictable. Businesses call it unsustainable. But Trump calls it winning. Like the Trade Federation, Trump framed his tariffs as protection, protecting American jobs, American sovereignty, American industry. But the reality is the same as it was back on Naboo. Trade policies used as a tool of domination. Palpatine used the Trade Federation blockade to destabilize a planet and justify emergency powers. Trump's tariffs destabilized the economy, creating uncertainty, and allowing him to act without oversight, punishing countries, companies, and even states that don't fall into line. In both cases, the goal wasn't fair trade. It was control through instability. And when you weaponize trade, you don't protect your people, you hold them hostage. Empires don't care about free markets. They care about obedience. We've seen this story before. A republic built on democracy, slowly overtaken by fear, power, and control. An empire that defines who belongs and who doesn't. That silences truth, that rewards loyalty over law, that uses the courts, the military, and the media not to serve the people, but to protect those in power. Trump didn't build this alone. Just like Palpatine, he used the tools already in place. He exploited division. He blurred the lines between government and propaganda. And he did it all while saying he was saving us. But this is not saving. This is control. He wields the courts like a saber, uses the military without consent, silences critics, demonizes the minorities, from tariffs that hurt working Americans to policies that enrich the elite, from late-night voices canceled under pressure to protest crushed by force. This is not the will of the people. This is the rise of an empire. In Star Wars, the empire didn't win because it was strong. It won because people stopped resisting. They accepted fear. They normalized cruelty. They let the powerful rewrite the rules. But rebellions aren't born out of strength. They're born out of conscience. One voice refusing to stay silent. One act of courage in the face of tyranny. One person who says, "This isn't normal, and I won't accept it." So if this feels familiar, if you see the parallels, if the phrase "make the universe great again" doesn't feel like satire anymore, then don't just scroll by. Don't just say, "That's politics," because once you give in, once you accept the empire, you become part of it. The good news, there's still time. The Death Star isn't fully operational yet. You can fight back. You can speak up. You can vote. Refuse to let fascism dress itself up as patriotism. The Republic may be dying, but there is hope that the Republic can survive. Because rebellions...
Hey, I hope things work out for you.
Rebellions are built on hope.
We'll give her your name and hope that gets us a meeting with Saul.
Hope?
Yeah. Rebellions are built on hope.
You're asking us to invade an Imperial installation based on nothing but hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.